wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day.
What's good, everyone? Welcome into the Bucks Film Room podcast. My name is Brian Sampson. I'm your host. You can find me on Twitter at Bucks Film Room. I also write about the Milwaukee Bucks for Forbes Sports and a little bit for Dairyland Express. So thank you all for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Last week I was out sick, which is why we did not have a pod last week. However, we will be dropping one every Monday on Apple, on Spotify, and also on YouTube. So really appreciate you checking in. The goal of this podcast is just to help us learn more about basketball. Once you understand some more of the intricacies and nuances of the game, it can be a lot more fun of a game to follow and to watch and tune in, especially this year with Adrian Griffin, the Bucks' new head coach. And there's a lot of talk about Griffin and his schemes and his personnel last week, especially on Twitter. That was one of the hot topics. So we're going to touch on that a little bit later. I'm going to give my 2 cents and weigh in on that topic. We're also going to go through, it's been about 3 weeks now with the season. And so we're going to take a position by position look at the Bucks to see how are they doing with their rotations? How are the players holding up? Where is there room for growth and for improvement? And so we're really going to go position by position and take an in-depth look here later in this podcast. For now, it was a great week for the Bucks. They were 4-0. They're starting to right the ship. No, things are not perfect, but they're looking a lot better. So that's really a great start for the Bucks. Last week, like I said, 4-0 with wins over the Chicago Bulls, a revenge game, big win against the Toronto Raptors. They smoked the Charlotte Hornets and moved to 2-0 in that NBA in-season tournament. And then they beat the Mavericks on the second night of a back-to-back, which was a really gritty win by the Bucks. You love to see that. They weren't at their healthiest. Chris Middleton was out, Jay Crowder's out, Beauchamp is out, missing a lot of guys. They had just played the Hornets the night before. It was also their third game in 4 days. Mavericks were coming off of 2 days rest. So really a lot of reasons you could say, oh, it's all right for the Bucks to lose that, but they gutted it out and they beat the Mavericks in a shootout. So that was really fun to see. As far as just backing up one night to their Hornets game, that's part of that NBA in-season tournament that they have going on. So Milwaukee is now 2-0. They play the Washington Wizards next Friday night in Milwaukee with a chance to move to 3-0. I fully expect that they should take care of business, go there or protect their home court, move to 3-0, and then that following Tuesday, so November 28th is what that date is, they play the Miami Heat. And Miami, they're 2-0 as well in that in-season tournament. They still play the Knicks, but I wouldn't be surprised if the winner of the Eastern Conference Group B comes down to that Bucks and Heat game. So we'll really see how Milwaukee approaches that, how that game goes down. But that's for next week. We'll save that breakdown for next week or the week after. For now, I really just wanted to take a position by position look at the Milwaukee Bucks and how are they holding up after 3 weeks now. We're starting to get a better understanding of who's in the rotation. What will that look like? What will each player's role be within the rotation? Again, we're going to use positions. I use these different positions in the first show, I believe it was, instead of doing the typical point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, center. We're going to use cleaning the glass. They have different denominations for positions. So they use point guard, they use combo guard, they use wing, forwards, and bigs. So those are the positions that we are going to use to really break down the Bucks rotation. Starting with point guard. Point guard, it's a Damian Lillard show. He's the only true point guard on the roster, especially as Cleaning the Glass has them lined up. He's the only true point guard on Milwaukee's roster, and the Bucks roster is really set up in a unique way to only support one true point guard. I mean, yeah, they could do 2 point guards for sure. Don't get me wrong, but they can also withstand having only one true point guard with Damian Lillard. And that's because, so you have Lillard with such a high usage rate. He needs the ball in his hands a lot, but when he's not running the show, they got Giannis, they got Chris Middleton, and then Campaign, which we'll get to him. He's set up as a combo guard with the Bucks in this offense. So point guard, Damian Lillard, he really is the guy that's running the show there. And his numbers are going to look different this year. We can't compare, in my perspective, we can't compare this season with the Bucks to his previous seasons with the Portland Trailblazers. That's apples to oranges. His role is going to look a lot different in Portland, what his running mate was Jeremy Grant and CJ McCollum. Obviously, it's a lot different here in Milwaukee with Giannis right there next to him. So that's always an important caveat to note is what does his role actually look like? Yes, he's going to have the ball and he has the ball in his hands a lot, but he's not being asked to do everything. He talked about this a little bit after the Mavericks game where he called Giannis the horse. So it's really Giannis is 1A, Damian Lillard is 1B, at least for the first 43 minutes or so. The last 5 minutes, it shifts more into Damian Lillard's hand. That's where he thrives down the clutch, really setting up those situations, not only to get himself good looks, but to get his teammates good looks. We've seen that already a number of times this year where he's gone full Dame time late in the games and he's hit some big shots, even though his overall shooting numbers are struggling. They're starting to come up a little bit, but he's hit some big shots down the stretch. What impresses me the most is he always seems to make the right play. He really balances that line between being selfish and getting his own shots and being unselfish and making the right reads. So when a defense is blitzing him, So when a defense is blitzing him, he knows that's the time to dump it off to his role man, whether that be Giannis, Brooke Lopez, somebody else. He really does a fantastic job of manipulating the defenses that way and taking what they're giving him. The Bucks have such great firepower on offense that it's great if Lillard can score and get his own shot. But if he has to give it up, that means it's Giannis going downhill 4-on-3, or Chris Middleton, Brooke Lopez, Malik Beasley in the corner, Pat Connaughton. We saw him make a pretty big shot against the Mavericks as well. So it's been really fun to watch him just understand defenses. Drew Holiday, great player, great point guard. Eric Bledsoe before him, good player, good point guard. But Damian Lillard, he really separates from those two. He's elite at making the right plays. He knows how to get his shot off. He knows how to get his teammates' shots off. It's really fun to see him figure out how to play with Giannis. He talked about this as well, saying he wants to let Giannis go to work, but he also needs to stay in rhythm. When Giannis is going off for these 40-point games, he's not saying he's trying to take shots away, but he needs that ball in his hands. He needs to take those shots that are there in order to stay in rhythm and stay ready for those quarters or those stretches or the end of games when Milwaukee is really going to need him. So that's been fun to see him already start to figure that out. We've seen a lot of growth in that partnership. It hasn't come as natural as Bucks fans or as we were hoping, but we've already seen them make a lot of progress in that area. And there's a lot of progress that they still have to make. A lot of great basketball left to be played, a lot of season, but we're already starting to see that progress. As far as Lillard, he's been in a shooting slump to begin the year. There's no doubt about that. Wanted to talk a little bit about effective field goal percentage compared to true shooting percentage. So, effective field goal percentage combines threes and twos into one formula with weights more on the threes. So, it really takes a look at both all your shots, but instead of so if somebody's 10 for 20 from the field, their field goal percentage would be 50%. But if they make a couple of threes in there, then that puts an extra emphasis and weight on the threes to tick up that 3-point percentage or the effective field goal percentage because obviously, if you're making a couple of threes, those are worth an extra point compared to the two. So effective field goal percentage, but then true shooting percentage takes that same formula but builds on it by adding in free throws. And so that's where Damian Lillard, we've seen him be very effective this year, where he's been great at getting to the line. And when he gets there, he's been amazing at finishing as well. So that's been really fun to see. So effective field goal percentage, there's been 138 players in the NBA this season who have taken at least 100 shots. Lillard ranks 110th among those 138 players in effective field goal percentage. But he's been so effective at getting to the line and knocking down free throws that if you take in that same account, 138 players who've taken at least 100 shots, he ranks 44th in true shooting percentage. Obviously, still a lot of room to grow. That takes into account a lot of these bigs that get some easier dunks. He's taken some more shots than a lot of these guys, but 44th in true shooting percentage compared to 110th in effective field goal percentage. It really will be interesting to see. We've seen him get hot a couple of times already. How will that percentage continue to grow, and what will the Bucks offense look like when he's ready to take that to the next step? Moving on to combo guards. So, like I said, Damian Lillard is the only true point guard on the Bucks roster. As far as combo guards, they have a couple of them that are listed on Cleaning the Glasses website. Moving on to combo guards. So, like I said, Damian Lillard is the only point guard on the roster. Combo guard, they have both Campaign and AJ Green. AJ Green, just a flat out shooter, hasn't got a lot of playing time. I think some fans or some people were wondering coming into this season if he'd get more playing time, more of a look this year. It hasn't really happened. When he comes in, though, he just is ready to shoot, ready to fire away, knock down shots, hitting, I think, 43, 44% of his threes this year. That's been great to see. He just is always ready. That's hard to do, spending a lot of time, most of the games on the bench. But when he comes in, he's just firing away. No issue pulling that trigger. Elite shooter. Rest of his game, okay, there's question marks about the rest of his game, but it's really been fun just to see him pull that trigger. And I'm curious, just if you were to ever get an extended look, which would not happen on this Bucks team unless there's an injury to Lillard or to Malik Beasley, to one of these guys ahead of him. But what would he do? What would he look like if he got an extended look? He's ready to shoot. Great. He can be a great floor spacer next to Giannis. Obviously, given his defensive limitations of Lillard, of Beasley, that's really where you can't put two or three of those guys on the court at the same time, which hasn't bared on the bench, but still, 3-point shooting has been fun to watch. The other combo guard that I want to talk about is Campaign. His numbers are down. If you just look at basic box scores, it looks like he's having a bad season, averaging the fewest points, fewest rebounds, fewest assists, fewest minutes per game in the last 5 years. Coming over from Phoenix, he had a little bit larger of a role coming off their bench, running their second unit. That's not the case in Milwaukee. And he's still playing fantastic. He's killing it from the 3-point line, knocking down over 50% of his threes. He's just doing tremendous work. I love him in this role. I advocated strongly for Milwaukee to sign him, and it's not because he's some elite point guard who can run a team, who can lead the team in scoring, who can even run second units in Milwaukee, but he just fits. Wow. But he just fits exactly what they need. He can spread the floor. He can play off ball. He's shared the court a little bit with Damian Lillard playing off ball in those situations. But typically when he's on the court, Giannis is also out there, and Giannis is basically running that point guard spot, which is why Campaign went from being a true point guard in previous years to now being lined up as a combo guard. So that's really been just cool to see. He's got shiftiness to him. He's really a change of pace player. That's part of what makes him hard to guard. Is you see that shot on how his shot looks, where he's got his feet pointed off to the side. He's got his left shoulder, because he's a lefty shooting, left shoulder lined up with the rim. That's different than you see. A lot of guys want their feet squared up, 5 toes, 10 toes pointed at the rim, hips, shoulders, all in line with the hoop. That's typically the stance that a lot of players take on their shot. Where Campaign, he's more tilted to try to get that left shoulder in line with the rim, but it's working for him. We're not going to critique that too much. He's on fire. He's draining shots from the 3-point line, and he's a decent facilitator. Again, he's not going to, especially in the Bucks offense, be asked to run even their second unit for a time on end. And it's really just good to see. He's that change of pace player. He can get hot here and there. Defensively, not the best defensive player, but he can compete on that side. He's a smart player. He understands his role in that. He'll get after it a little bit, but he's not going to be some elite defensive stud, which again, I think limits his minutes. When you have Payne, Lillard, Malik Beasley all in the rotation, how many of those guys can you play at the same time? We've seen Adrian Griffin try to do a couple of them. Sometimes Payne and Lillard will split the floor, Payne and Beasley, Beasley and Lillard. And I think that's why they're having a lot of issues on defense. But still, Payne, I think he's been a great addition to this team. It's really been fun to see him come into his own as far as understanding his role in Milwaukee, even if his overall numbers are. Moving on to the wing, the Bucks have several players here who are listed as wings, primarily being Malik Beasley, Pat Connaughton, and Marjan Beauchamp, and Andre Jackson Jr. Can't forget about him. So let's start at the top with Malik Beasley. He's taken some fire this year. I think some of it is warranted. Well, I think it's all warranted, but it's also understanding the role and expectation that he's supposed to play. I've talked about it previously, I believe, as far as he's just not a defensive stopper. He's never played that role in his career, never shown the potential or the ability to. And so it was unfair for the Bucks to put that on him. And I don't know why they did that and continue to do that. That's a recipe for disaster. We've seen a lot of their defensive struggles because Malik Beasley is being asked to be their primary defensive stopper on the wing. So that's really an unfair ask of Malik Beasley. The Bucks, I think, have all season to figure it out. I think they'll move in a different direction eventually. I just can't imagine going into the postseason with Malik Beasley as your primary defensive guy. That being said, he competes on that end of the floor, man. He gets after it. You cannot fault his energy and effort level. I love how hard he plays on that end. He's trying his hardest to fulfill that role. A lot of times we hear, and I despise this, I hate this, is that defense is just an energy and effort thing. Just play harder and you'll be good at defense. No, it's not that simple. Defense is a skill. You don't tell people on offense, just shoot the ball harder and you'll make more threes. You'll be a good shooter. You just got to try harder on offense. It doesn't work like that, especially at the NBA level. And so I just want to put that out there is it's not his fault. He's being asked to do something that he's never shown that he's capable of doing. And it's not a but, this is an and situation. And he's working hard out there. He's trying really hard. A lot of his minutes are coming with Damian Lillard next to him. That's not helpful for defense. That's not a great pairing on that end of the floor. We'll see here. He's been shooting the lights out. That's been fun to watch. Offensively, he's been as advertised as far as his shot from the three-point line. That's been great to see. Ideally, it'd be nice if the Bucks move him to a bench role if they can get a defensive stopper. Hello, Alex Caruso. That'd be a great pairing. I don't know if that's a realistic target, but moving a defensive focused guy into that spot would be amazing. And then Beauchamp, I think, would thrive even more off the bench, at least to even stagger his minutes from Lillard. So that way the Bucks can have one defensive focused guard or wing on the court at all times. Pat Connaughton is another wing. He's been getting a ton of playing time here after Jay Crowder went down. He's been struggling from the three-point line overall this season. Made 34% of his threes last year. That's where his mark is at this year. However, we've really seen him come into his own in the last week for sure, maybe even a little bit longer, where he's starting to finally hit some more threes. And that just has a snowball effect on the rest of his game. Once you start hitting threes, it becomes contagious. You start to rebound harder, play harder. I mean, he's always been a hustle guy, but it's nice to see some of those threes go down. Because I'm going to say an unpopular opinion, I don't know that he's the defensive guy anymore that we remember. He can't really stay with quicker wings or guards on the perimeter, not strong enough to battle with those bigger wings or forwards down low. He has a little bit of switchability in that, but he just has not been playing to that same defensive level, in my opinion, that we've seen from him in the past. And I think that really, it could be a result of his three-point shot not falling. I don't know, but it's really just been kind of a couple of worrisome trends there with his three-point shooting and his defense. If the Bucks were to make a move, I wouldn't be surprised if he was a guy that gets traded for salary matching purposes. Not saying that the Bucks should get rid of him. He's proven his value in the playoffs time and time again. Giannis trusts him. He has that great two-man game, that great screening game with Giannis. I'm not saying the Bucks should trade him by any means. I'm just saying that for salary matching purposes, if the Bucks are looking to make a deal, he might be the odd man out in that regard. He was a Budenholzer guy. Obviously, new guy, Adrian Griffin. He's starting to get a lot more run, but you never know how that could play out. It'll be really interesting to see. Obviously, right now, you can't move on from him just given the Bucks wing situation, but I think he's been playing well. It's nice to see him finally knock down some shots after a year plus, almost 2 years of an extended slump. So it's really good for him. He's playing hard, getting a lot of run in. Moving on to the two young wings, Beauchamp and Andre Jackson Jr. They've been fun to watch, man. I wouldn't say that I'm a critic of Beauchamp, but I also haven't been somebody who's like, oh, you need to play him 30 minutes a night. You need to start him. You need to do that. I think there are more ways than playing a rookie or a young guy 30 minutes beside, or there are more ways to develop a rookie or young guy besides playing him 30 minutes. He's got to earn that time. I think that starts with the smaller role. We've seen him take a good step this year. I've been happy with Beauchamp's progress. He still has his struggles to be sure, but he's working hard out there. He understands his role as a defensive stopper and is trying to fill that on the Bucks. Again, I think it just comes down to, does he have the talent? His wingspan is tremendous. Great wingspan for his position. He doesn't have the most lateral quickness. He's not elite at moving laterally, which has gotten him into trouble at times. But again, it's been good. I'm not going to be too hard on him. It's good to see him take that step forward. As far as Andre Jackson Jr., he's been a breath of fresh air. He just does a little bit of everything. We even saw him drill this nasty step back that had the bench going crazy. Drilled a step back three. He's been fun to watch. He hustles. He fouls a little bit too much, but he'll understand how to get that energy level and that effort level under control. But just he does a little bit of everything. Can guard multiple positions. Can handle the rock a little bit. Can see the court. Great teammate. Great, really high basketball IQ. It's really been fun to see him watch and get a little bit more run. He's been kind of the de facto starter. Started a couple of games. And has played 10, 12 minutes, something like that. Just kind of starts beginning of the first and third quarter, maybe played a little stint in the second quarter. But other than that, and I think that's a fine role for him. 10, 12 minutes. You don't want to push him too hard. This is a good way to prove, let's get his feet wet. Let's see how much time he can spend on the court. Let's see, can he earn more playing time? Guys, forget it's hard to succeed in the NBA when you're a first year, second year player. Last year, I went back and looked. Last year, in the conference finals and beyond, there are only two players who played significant minutes in the conference finals and the NBA finals. One was Austin Reeves for the Los Angeles Lakers. The other one was Christian Brown for the Denver Nuggets. Other than that, there were no rookies or second-year players who played a significant role for any of the Final Four teams in the NBA. So it's really hard to rely on those young guys. They have to get their feet wet, earn that playing time through a smaller role, and really build up to that point. Next up is forward, where the Bucks have Jay Crowder and Chris Middleton playing most of those minutes. I'm going to touch on Jay Crowder here a little bit because I think it ties into the young guys in Beauchamp and Andre Jackson Jr. in their roles. Crowder is playing pretty well. He was shooting really well. He was starting to get his feet under him defensively. That was really fun to see. He's not going to be the type of defender who's going to guard these elite, quicker wings. He's not the guy that can slide into the two or even the three in the starting lineup, but he's starting to play a lot better. He's just a really smart player, gritty, tough. That's what the Bucks need. It's what they've kind of been missing since PJ Tucker when they won the NBA championship. That's what they got him for last year. That's why they gave up all their second round picks last year for him. And it's nice to see him. It was nice to see him to get into that groove and really start to show that he could be the type of player Milwaukee traded for. He's out now for 2 months. Hopefully he can come back in January with a groin strain. And it really sounds painful. He had to have surgery on his abductor and abdominal. Like that just sounds painful. A groin injury that goes like that high. Ooh, like that. We'll see if he can come back. 2 months might be on the aggressive side of that. We'll see how that goes. But he was playing really well. Chris Middleton, Bucks are being extremely patient with him. I think he might be getting frustrated at times is with how patient they are being. He's only averaging 19 minutes. His tops for the year is like 22 minutes. That's it. Considering that he had mentioned to, I believe it was Chris Haynes of Yahoo Sports or Bleacher Report, wherever he is through, that he expected to be back to his full minutes by game 7 or 8. And here we are at game 13, and he's only maxed out at 22 minutes. They're being very patient, which is good. Milwaukee went 4-0 last week. They're racking up the wins. That's fine. You don't want to have him play have a setback. He's not playing back to backs. It's about the long game for him, especially the last year and a half that he's been battling various injuries. So it is what it is, I guess. But hopefully that continues to ramp up. he continues to sound optimistic, saying he's feeling good. It's all part of the plan, yet he doesn't seem to know what exactly the plan is. Anyway, he's still playing well. Even in his limited minutes, his per 36 numbers are on track with previous years. So per 36 minutes, he's averaging 21.3 points, 7.3 rebounds, and 6.5 assists. He's still finding a shot. His 3-point percentage is down this year. He's still finding that stroke, but he's looked good. He had a sick move on last Wednesday against the Raptors with Scotty Barnes guarding him. I'd posted a clip on Twitter where hit him with a couple of crossovers, hit him with a step back, drained a three. Scotty Barnes was literally scratching his head in the middle of the ball going through the hoop because he had no idea what happened. Middleton, he looks spry out there. I like the way that he looks. He's been playing really well as that connector role. He understands that his role is going to be a lot less than what it has been in the past few years. This year, he's playing a lot more minutes at the 3 and fewer minutes at the 4 than he did the last several years under Budenholzer, which is interesting to see. We'll see how that trends. But overall, the Bucks have been really, really good when he's on the court. They're outscoring teams by 12.6 points per 100 possessions, according to Cleaning the Glass. So they've been elite when he's been out there. A lot of that time, I think, has been with Giannis and Dame, but he's also taken his turns running that offense. So that'll be really interesting to see and fun to see that. I'll be curious to see how Griffin staggers Middleton, Giannis, and Lillard when Middleton's back to full time. We've seen it be a lot of Giannis making sure one of Giannis or Lillard is on the court most times, but will he let Middleton have some more of that run so that way Lillard and Giannis can get more time on the court together? But there's a lot of possibilities there. It might even switch up from game to game. Who knows? But it'll be fun to see. Adding that third playmaker, that third all-star in the mix is really going to give the Bucks a big advantage moving forward. So we'll see how Griffin plays that out. Last but not least, let's touch on the bigs. The Bucks have gone with a three-man big rotation, just like they did under Budenholzer, which is probably a good thing. Thanasis, he got a little bit of run, not even in garbage time. He looks better than he has recently. Plays hard, but he's undersized at the position. Doesn't bring a lot besides defensive effort and hustle. Robin Lopez, the way that he looked in the preseason, it's probably good that he's glued to the bench. I think they really got Robin Lopez as a backup emergency option for some of the tough playoff matchups, like maybe Philadelphia against Joel Embiid or Denver Nuggets against Jokic. Maybe you don't want Giannis or Bobby Portis guarding those guys for long stretches. So I wonder if he was brought back for that reason. He's a great teammate, obviously, but let's keep him where he's at. Good job, Griffin, recognizing that. Starting with Giannis, then with the bigs. I mean, what is there to say? He's been really good this year. He's been just fun to watch. He's had some very dominant stretches already this season. And really, he's been dominating the first 43 ish minutes and then hands it off to Dame for the last 5 in some of these close games. So I think that's really a great role for him is let him wear down these defenses. Let him just keep on attacking, punishing them. That's been fun to watch. I think his decision making has been a lot better. We're starting to see him figure out the game with Lillard. A lot of times, what I was seeing early in the season is take the fast break, for example. Giannis bringing it up like a freight train. Typically, he'd barrel into the lane. A lot of times, good stuff would happen. But what would happen, though, is as he's taking it down the lane, Lillard would be on the wing wide open because his man's sinking into the paint to help him. Giannis didn't look at him, didn't see him, or didn't saw him, decided to take it on his own. What we saw against the Mavericks was Lillard brought the ball up and in transition, dumped it off to Giannis in the middle of the court. Giannis goes barreling down the lane, but before he gets even 2 feet into the paint, he kicked it back out to the Lillard on the right wing for a 3-pointer. That's perfect. He's got to recognize that when you're playing with one of the greatest shooters, you want to find that balance between him attacking the rim in those situations and also just taking what the defenses are giving him. Instead of picking up maybe a charge or risking taking a charge or picking up a charge, he can kick it out to Lillard every now and then to keep the defense honest and off balance. And hopefully then that pulls a guy away from him in transition because they know that ball is going to go back out there. So that's been fun to see him. figure that out. He's starting to figure that out with the short roll as well. He's still hesitating, still a little bit slow when he catches that short roll from Lillard, either at the 3-point line or at the free throw line. But we've seen some highlights, some clips of him putting that together. That's been great to see. Free throw percentage, 3-point percentage are nasty. He had that one big game from the free throw line, but his free throw percentage, I think, is as low as it's ever been in his career. 3-point percentage is way down there. That's not good to see, but he is finding his touch in that 4 to 14 foot range. I think Nathan Marzian, I don't know how you say his last name, but I think he posted that on Twitter, a nice little breakdown of that, showing that touch, which is good to see because he's really hitting those short floaters, some of those shots that are going to come with Lillard off of the pick and roll. That's been nice to see that his touch is right there. He's getting more comfortable in that area. That's been great to see. Brook Lopez, moving on to Brook Lopez, he's really, since the Bucks have changed back to the drop defense, or changed first to the drop defense under Griffin, he's been a lot better defensively. He had a 7-block game, a 6-block game. He's been really good, and the Bucks defense has excelled. Excelled is too strong of a word. They've improved. Let's go with improved. They've improved since moving to that alignment, which I don't know why Griffin didn't start there to begin with. He really which I don't know why Griffin didn't start there to begin with. We'll touch on this a little bit later, but that just seemed like such a natural starting point to build your defense around, because the Bucks had had so much success under Budenholzer in that alignment, and you should have just taken what was working. But anyway, kudos to Griffin for adjusting, to listening to his players, and to working through that. When Lopez is on the floor, though, the offense is still figuring it out. Their offense isn't very good with him out there on the court. There's a lot of room for that. Brook Lopez is shooting, I shouldn't say shooting, just scoring in general, not necessarily where it's been the last couple of years. I think he's still trying to figure out his role in all of that as well. So offensively, room to grow. Defense, it's nice to see that the Bucks have reverted back to where they were at last year and previous years by at least using him to anchor the paint, and it's paid dividends for a couple of weeks now since they went back to that. Last but not least, in the bigs category, and the last player we'll touch on in this exercise, is Bobby Portis. He's been playing hard, man. He loves that respect and the love that the fans give him. He loves love, and it's been great to see him continue to work his heart out on offense, crashing the boards, flexing on people. Really, just it's been great to see all of that continues to be a staple of his game. His 3-point shooting stroke is coming back now. That's amazing. He started out very slowly, but the last week he's been really shooting the ball well, which then helps obviously his overall game. So that's been really, really good to see. I'm just looking back here. So he was 1 for 2 against the Mavericks, 1 for 3 against the Hornets, 2 for 3 against the Raptors, 3 for 6 against the Bulls, 2 for 5 against the Magic. So that's his last 5 games. So he's really shooting the ball well. That's great to see after his slow start. He fits in nicely, just like he did under Budenholzer, fits in nicely alongside Brook Lopez and Giannis. They all seem to complement each other nicely. So that's a good 3-man rotation the Bucks have. Defense, he just is not a good defender. He's 6'11", decent wingspan, but he rarely, if ever, gets any blocks, gets steals. He rarely seems to have an effect on the other team. I mean, he averages half a block for his career, a little less than half a block for his career, half a block this year. I don't know what that's about. He just doesn't have that great instinct, great timing, not great lateral quickness to stay with those guys. But it's, you take the good with the bad. There's no perfect player, so it is what it is. It's just nice to see him working hard on the boards, finally getting repaid with his shooting stroke. That's been really great to see. That wraps up the position by position look through the first 3 weeks. So just wanted to finish then with conversation about Adrian Griffin. There's a lot of talk on Twitter last week about Griffin. A lot of heat on him on the hot seat already, 10 games through this season. So I just wanted to touch on that, give my thoughts. I think it's fair to have red flags about Adrian Griffin at this point in the year. Um, there have been some things that have happened that haven't been ideal, as far as Terry Stotts resigning a week before the season started. That was just weird. Still, we don't know. Was that a Griffin thing or was that a Stotts thing? We don't know. So maybe the blame is misplaced on Griffin there. It's just an odd start to a brand new uh, coaching career. I think that he did a great move in hiring Stott, somebody with head coaching experience, somebody who is great at designing offenses. I thought that was a great hire. I was extremely excited about it, especially then after they acquired Lillard. Thought that was a great partnership. But then to lose the most veteran, the coach with the most experience on your roster, that's a big blow. That's a tough one to take. Um, Especially as, I mean, right now they're obviously doing fine, but moving forward, like there's no other coach, Joe Prunty, with a little bit of head coaching experience, I suppose, but no other coach on that roster or on the staff with head coaching experience. I thought that was just a big red flag. Starting out, the defense, the way that he adapted that is just, it was another questionable move. He wasn't taking the reins of a team that had won 20 games last year. I mean, this is a team that won the most regular season games in the last half of a decade. And I think you just it was important to recognize that they found the base defense, that drop coverage that worked. Part of what happens, I think, with coaching staffs that you see a lot is team moves on from one coaching staff and then they try to hire a coach that completely fits their old coach's weakness. So Budenholzer didn't have multiple defenses, wasn't able to adjust. So what did they do? They hired a guy who loves to adjust, who loves to play multiple defense. But the answer almost always relies somewhere in between of, you need that base defense that you can rely on to be great, to be elite. And you need to be able to adjust and mix things up so teams don't get completely comfortable. I think we're seeing Griffin find that balance already. So kudos to him. He deserves a lot of props for that, even if it was late, that finding that balance of, all right, what is your base defense? And then how are you going to adjust off of that? So it's really good to see that he's done that, because the Bucks, they didn't need a complete overhaul. They just need some tweaks here and there, some more timely shooting, more timely defense. Defense really wasn't the issue the last couple of years in the postseason. Their defense was great. It was their offense that they had issues with, especially in the half court. So just building off of that. But no, I don't think Griffin should be fired. I do not think that he should be on the hot seat 13 games into his coaching season. It's a lot like the Packers, right? With their young team, is you want to see him making progress. You want to see the Bucks trending in the right direction. And they're doing that so far. Last week, coming off 4-0 week, it's not perfect, but they're trending in the right direction, which is good to see, and really trying to figure out how are we going to put these pieces together long term, because it's not like Griffin was just the only new piece and everybody else is returning. Swapping out Drew Holiday for Damian Lillard was a huge, massive piece that the Bucks had to maneuver around. So it was just like one factor, being Griffin being the only factor of being a new head coach. They had a lot of moving pieces, Grayson Allen leaving, Malik Beasley coming in, and so there's a lot of different moving pieces like that. It's good to see that they're trending in the right direction. And there are times where Griffin's looked out of his element. The front office obviously will have a better handle on how are things going behind the scenes. In games, we only see the tip of the iceberg, but the front office will get that in-depth look. I'm pleased with Griffin's progress already in the first 3 weeks of this season. I think he has a lot of room to grow. It's good to see that he's willing to listen to his players and not just run a dictatorship. So I'm impressed with that part of it. Let's just see where he goes and let's handle this. I mean, this is the best era of Bucks basketball we'll probably ever have in our lifetime. It took them 50 years between championships. Let's just enjoy this ride instead of always being overly critical. And I'm guilty of that. I'm not saying that I'm innocent of that. I'm definitely guilty of that at times. It's just I'm trying to sit back and enjoy the ride that we have here. I hope Griffin is a man that leads the Bucks to 2, 3, 4 championships. That would be awesome to see. And even though it was a rocky start, he's already showing signs of progress. Let's just give this time to see where it goes before we make any sweeping conclusions. Quick looking ahead at next week. Bucks have another busy week with 4 games. They play the Wizards twice. That should be 2 wins. I mean, the Wizards are really just a mess. They're walking trash right now. So that should be 2 wins. They play them on Monday and then again on Friday in the in-season tournament. So those should be 2 wins. They play the Trailblazers on Sunday. Portland That'll be a Dame revenge game. Dame revenge game, maybe? I guess that's what I'll call it, a Dame revenge game. Sunday against the Trailblazers. And then the game that I skipped over is the big one of the week, Wednesday against the Celtics. Celtics are 11-2 at the top of the Eastern Conference. It'll be in Boston on ESPN. That'll be a big matchup, and there will be sweeping conclusions drawn about that game. The Celtics win. Oh, the Bucks made the wrong move. Celtics made the right move. They're a powerhouse. All 5 of their starters should be in the All-Star game, should be in the Hall of Fame. No, I'm not bitter about that coverage at all. Why are you asking that? But there'll be sweeping conclusions that'll be made after that one game. So prepare yourself for that. Okay. If the Bucks win, it'll probably go that way as well. Of, oh, they made the right move. But I caution everyone, it's one game. Let's just let it play out. It might be a tiny glimpse of what we'll get in the postseason, but don't make any sweeping conclusions. Don't make any big proclamations one way or the other. Let's just take it slow, one step at a time. All right. Well, that's everything I have for you all today. Thank you for tuning in. Again, this podcast comes out every Monday. You can find it on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Really appreciate everyone's time. Really appreciate you tuning in. So I'll catch you next time.